He had chosen the venue carefully, the way men like Conrad Hale always chose things, with an eye toward audience. The Ashford Grand's rooftop terrace sat 42 floors above downtown Atlanta, wrapped in glass and soft light, the kind of place where deals were celebrated and legacies were announced. He had reserved it for the evening under the banner of the Hale Group's annual Innovation Gala, and he had made certain that the guest list was curated, printed, and circulated in precisely the right circles before the ink dried on the invitations. He had also made certain that one name, above all others, was on it: Josephine Mercer. He had typed her name himself, which was the kind of detail his assistant noticed and did not mention. Conrad stood at the edge of the terrace that evening, with a glass of bourbon he had barely touched, watching the elevator doors with the particular anticipation of a man who had rehearsed his own satisfaction. He was 51, tall, silver at the temples in the way that photographed well. He wore a custom charcoal suit, and the kind of ease that comes not from contentment, but from years of performing it. The Hale Group was worth $800 million. The Forbes profile had run 3 months ago. Everything was exactly where he had arranged it. He thought about Josephine the way he always thought about her in these moments, as a problem he had long since solved. They had been married for 9 years. He had been a mid-level finance director when they met. She had been building something called Vantage Analytics out of a studio apartment in Decatur with a used laptop and a whiteboard she'd found at a Goodwill. He had believed in her, or he had believed in what he saw, a woman with a mind like a blade and nothing yet to show for it. He had told people later, at dinner parties, that he had always known she would succeed. He did not tell them that he had spent most of those 9 years reminding her, quietly and then not so quietly, of everything he had made possible. He had introduced her to her first 3 clients. He had co-signed the lease on her first real office. He had smiled beside her at the Atlanta Business Chronicle photo shoot when Vantage landed its first Fortune 500 contract and said, "That's my wife," with the emphasis arranged just so, like a man acknowledging a project that had finally performed. What he had not done was listen. When she told him she was exhausted, when she told him she needed him to be present in a way that was not contingent on her performance, when she sat across from him at the kitchen table on a Tuesday night in March, 7 years into the marriage, and said plainly that she felt invisible inside her own life. He had looked at her across the remains of a dinner she had cooked after a 12-hour day and said, "Josephine, you run a company. You are many things. Invisible is not one of them." He had considered that a compliment. The divorce had been quiet. Josephine did not make scenes. She had packed her things over a weekend while he was in Chicago for a conference, and she had left his key on the counter next to the coffee maker, with no note, which had bothered him more than he expected. Not because he had wanted the marriage to continue, but because he had expected, at minimum, a letter, some acknowledgement of what he had given her, something to confirm that she understood the shape of what she was leaving. There had been nothing. That was 4 years ago. In those 4 years, Vantage Analytics had grown from 40 employees to 400. Josephine had taken it public. The IPO had been covered in the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, and 3 separate segments on CNBC. Her net worth, as of the previous quarter, was estimated at $1.2 billion. She had been named to Time's list of the 100 most influential people in technology. She had given a commencement address at Howard University that had circulated widely enough to be quoted in congressional testimony. She had done all of it without mentioning his name once. Conrad had been watching. He told himself he was not watching. He checked her press coverage the way a man checks weather, casually, constantly, pretending it had no bearing on plans already made. He had sent the invitation 8 weeks before the gala. He had written the note himself, on Hale Group letterhead, cordial and measured. He said he hoped she would attend. He said it would be good to reconnect. He said, because he could not fully help himself, that he was proud of what she had built, as though pride were still his to offer, as though he retained some share in her outcome. He had a photographer booked. He had planned where he would stand when she walked in. He had imagined the room watching him watch her, and he had wanted them to see something specific. A man magnanimous enough to invite the woman he had left behind, and successful enough that the gesture cost him nothing. He had not considered the possibility that it might cost him everything. Josephine Mercer received the invitation on a Wednesday morning in her office on the 14th floor of Vantage's headquarters in Midtown. Her assistant, a precise young man named Theo, who screened everything, had placed it on her desk with a yellow sticky note that read simply, "Hale Group, your call." She read it once. She set it down. She went back to the earnings projection she had been reviewing before it arrived and read the same paragraph 4 times without processing a word. She thought about the kitchen table, the coffee maker, the key she had left without a note, because she had run out of things to say that she hadn't already said. She picked the invitation up again and read it a second time. Her COO, a woman named Britta Caldwell, who had been with her since year 2, and who knew her well enough to knock and enter simultaneously, appeared in the doorway with a tablet and stopped when she saw Josephine's expression. "What's that?" "An invitation." Josephine set it down again. "Conrad Hale's annual gala." Britta's face did a careful thing. "Are you going?" Josephine looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline, the cranes, the glass, the city still building itself, and thought about the 42 floors. She thought about the room full of people who would be watching. She thought about what Conrad expected to see when she walked in, and she thought about what he would actually see. And she felt something shift in her chest that was not quite satisfaction and not quite grief, but somewhere in the exact middle of the two. "Yes," she said. "I am." Britta waited. "Make sure Vantage has a table," Josephine said. "Book 8 seats, and call Denholm's security. I want 4 of their people there with me." She paused. "Tell them to wear the navy blazers." Britta wrote this down without changing her expression, which was one of the many reasons Josephine had kept her for 6 years. "Any particular reason for the security detail?" Josephine looked back at the invitation. "Because I can," she said, "and because I want him to see that I can." The night of the gala, Josephine dressed at the office. She did this sometimes when she didn't want to go home in between, when she needed to stay inside the momentum of the day rather than let it break. Her stylist came at 6. The dress was a deep burgundy, fitted, the kind of silhouette that required no apology. She wore her hair natural, close-cropped, the way she had begun wearing it 3 years ago, when she finally stopped having opinions about it that belonged to someone else. Diamond studs. No other jewelry. She looked at herself in the full-length mirror in her private bathroom and thought, "I have worked for everything in this room. Not just the dress, the room itself, the building it was in, the company that owned the building. All of it." She had grown up in Vine City, with a mother who worked 2 jobs and a father who had not stayed long enough to have opinions about her hair either. She had taken out loans for college and paid them back. She had been told, by professors and investors and men who shook her hand too briefly, that she was impressive for her circumstances. As though the circumstances were the story and the work was just context. She had stopped correcting people about that, eventually. The numbers corrected people better than she ever had. She met the Denholm team in the lobby at 7:15. 4 of them, 2 men and 2 women, all in the requested navy blazers, all carrying the particular stillness of people paid to be calm in rooms that aren't. The lead, a tall woman named Agent Wren, who had the kind of posture that occupies space without announcing itself, gave Josephine a brief rundown and then said simply, "We'll follow your lead." Josephine nodded. She liked that. She had spent too many years in rooms where other people decided where she should walk. The Ashford Grand Lobby was already full when they arrived. The elevator was glass-walled and faced the lobby on the ascent, and Josephine watched the crowd below diminish as they rose. The cluster of suits and cocktail dresses growing smaller, the noise receding into something quiet and clean. She felt the familiar sensation of altitude, not fear, just awareness, a reminder of scale. The rooftop doors were open. Music drifted out. A live jazz quartet set up near the East Terrace, the kind of low-tempo professionalism that costs more than it sounds like. Tables dressed in white linen. Floral arrangements the height of a man's shoulder. The kind of event that requires a certain literacy to navigate, and Josephine had been fluent in it for years, even when she hadn't felt like she belonged. She walked in. She heard it before she saw it. The small, almost involuntary shift in the room's ambient sound. Conversations that did not stop but changed register. The particular frequency of recognition. A woman near the bar in a silver dress touched her companion's arm. A man in a navy blazer, not from her team, turned his head. She had not come to make an entrance, but she had also not come to apologize for one. Conrad saw her from across the terrace. She watched his face do three things in quick succession. A flicker of pleasure, which was what he had planned for. A flicker of confusion, as his eye found the Denholm team flanking her. And then something else. Something that was not in the plan at all. A kind of recalibration. The moment when a man realizes the board has been arranged differently than he thought. She walked toward the vantage table, acknowledged the guests already seated. Britta, two of her board members, a senior vice president she had promoted last year, two partners from the firm that had advised her IPO, and sat down at the seat that had been placed deliberately facing the room. A server appeared. She asked for sparkling water. Conrad came to the table 12 minutes later. She had been counting, not obsessively, just the way you count when you are aware of time passing. He came alone, without the glass of bourbon, and he stopped at the edge of the table with the expression of a man who had prepared remarks and was now discovering they did not apply. Josephine, he smiled. It was a good smile. It had always been a good smile. I'm glad you came, Conrad. She looked at him directly. Not warmly, not coldly. The way you look at something you have examined before and no longer need to examine. Congratulations on the anniversary. 8 years. He glanced around the table, doing the quick arithmetic of who was there. He saw Britta. She saw him see Britta. You brought a team. I have a table. She indicated the empty chair across from her. Would you like to sit? He did, which was either bravery or the inability to do anything else, and for a moment neither of them spoke, and the quartet played something low and unhurried, and the city turned its lights on 42 floors below. The vantage numbers last quarter were impressive, he said. They were, the AI division especially. I read the analyst report. Which one? He paused. There had been 4. She knew which one he had read. Goldman's, he said. She nodded. He leaned forward slightly, in the way he used to when he was about to say something he believed mattered. I want you to know, he said, that I always believed in what you were building. Even when it was difficult between us, that was never in question for me. Josephine set down her water glass. She had thought about this moment. Not often. She did not spend much time looking backward anymore. But she had thought about it enough to know what she wanted to say, and to know that she would say it quietly, without performance, because she was not here for his audience. She was here for herself, which was the thing she had taken 4 years to understand fully. Conrad, she said, you believed in what you thought I was building. Those are different things. She picked up her water glass again. You believed in a version of me that needed you to believe in her. When I stopped needing that, you ran out of things to offer. He was quiet. You introduced me to 3 clients, she said. I'm grateful for that. That's real. She looked at him steadily. The rest of it, the way you held it, the way you counted it, that was yours. I never asked you to keep score. Somewhere at the other end of the terrace, a man began speaking into a microphone. Conrad's introduction. Welcome remarks from the Hale group. He would need to get up. He knew it, and she knew it. He didn't move yet. I thought you came because, he stopped. Restarted. I thought it meant something. That you were here. It does mean something, Josephine said. It means I'm not afraid of this room anymore. That's what it means. She said it without cruelty. Just fact. Set down the way you set down a key on a counter when you're done with it. He stood. He straightened his jacket. His expression had gone somewhere private where she couldn't follow, and she found she did not need to. Enjoy the evening, she said. He walked back toward the microphone. The program ran 40 minutes. Conrad spoke well, because he always spoke well. He talked about innovation and legacy, and the responsibility of success. He used the word gratitude 3 times. He introduced 3 honorees: a tech entrepreneur from Charlotte, a nonprofit founder from Birmingham, and a researcher from Emory, whose work on healthcare access had drawn national attention. He did not mention Josephine. She had not expected him to, but she noticed the people who did. The tech entrepreneur from Charlotte, a man named Aldous Webb, late 30s, who had scaled a logistics software platform to 60 million in annual revenue, found her during the cocktail hour after the program and said, "You're Josephine Mercer. I built my first pitch deck using the Vantage framework. I didn't know how to say so in a room like this, but I wanted you to know." He shook her hand. He said it the way people say things they mean, briefly, without decoration. She thanked him. The Emory researcher stopped her near the dessert table. She was a small woman in her 60s with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead and the distracted energy of someone always thinking about something else. "My daughter used your scholarship program," she said. "The HBCU pipeline one. She's in her second year at Spelman, computer science." She smiled. "She's going to be extraordinary." "She already is," Josephine said. "Tell her I said so." She moved through the rest of the evening the way she moved through most things now, with intention, without urgency. She did not look for Conrad. She did not avoid him either. He was in the room. He was not the room. Near 10 o'clock, as the evening began to ease toward its ending, Josephine stepped out onto the far end of the terrace where the crowd had thinned. The city was fully dark now, laid out below in its grid of light. The expressways, the neighborhoods, the old parts, and the new parts still becoming themselves. She had grown up in one of those dark pockets where the lights were fewer and the distances were longer. She had thought for a long time that the distance was a disadvantage. She had been wrong about that. Britta appeared beside her with 2 glasses of sparkling water and offered one without asking. "How are you doing?" Britta said. "Good," Josephine said, and she meant it without effort, which was how she knew it was true. He looked, Britta considered. He looked like a man who just finished a book and realized he'd been wrong about the ending. Josephine took a sip of water. Below, a vehicle's headlights moved slowly along the expressway, a single light threading through the dark. "He always thought the ending was about him," she said. That was the problem. She had spent 9 years in a marriage where her success was something that happened near Conrad rather than because of herself. He had counted things: introductions, co-signatures, smiles at photo shoots. He had kept a ledger she had never agreed to, and when she left, he had called the balance unfair. What she had understood, slowly and then all at once, was that she had never owed him a settlement. She had owed herself a start, and she had given herself one. She turned from the railing. Agent Wren caught her eye from across the terrace and gave a small nod. "All clear. Whenever you're ready." The rest of the Denholm team was stationed with the casual precision of people who had been doing this long enough to make it look like they were simply standing in rooms. "Let's go," Josephine said. They went through the terrace doors and into the elevator lobby. The glass walls of the elevator showed the descent, the room above receding, the lobby growing closer, the geometry of 42 floors compressing back into street level. She did not look back up. Conrad had seen what she had come to show him, and the thing she had come to show him was not anger, not triumph, not an accounting of everything she had built without him. The thing she had come to show him was simply herself, the version of herself that existed fully and without apology. In rooms like that one, the version he had once tried to summarize in a sentence at a dinner party and gotten almost entirely wrong. She had not come to correct the sentence. She had come to make it irrelevant. The lobby doors opened. The Atlanta night was warm and dense with summer, and the city moved the way cities move. Indifferent, continuous, indifferent to both of them. A car was waiting. Agent Wren opened the door. Britta was already on her phone, catching something that had come in during the evening. Josephine got in. The door closed. She looked out the window as the car pulled into traffic, and the Ashford Grand shrank in the side mirror, and then the angle changed, and it was gone. She had grown up being told that women like her were lucky when rooms like that let them in. She had spent 20 years building the rooms herself. She leaned back against the seat. Outside, the city continued, lit and loud and full of its own momentum. She did not feel victorious. She did not feel wounded. She felt something steadier than both of those. The specific weight of a woman who has put down something heavy and has no intention of picking it back up. The car turned onto the expressway. The lights of Atlanta spread out in every direction, more of them than she could count. And she thought of the woman in Vine City who had found the Goodwill whiteboard and written equations on it at 2 in the morning while her roommate slept, who had not known yet what she was building, but had known, with a certainty she could not then articulate, that she was building something. That woman had been right. And she had done it entirely on her own terms, which in the end were the only terms that had ever mattered.